Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Handel Wright, and I'm the Senior Advisor to the President on Anti-Racism and Inclusive Excellence, a professor in the Department of Educational Studies, and Director of the Center for Cultural Identity and Education here at the University of British Columbia. As moderator for today's event, I am delighted to welcome everyone to this exciting UBC Connects Masterclass with novelist and essayist Maaza Mengiste. Now, before we begin our program, I want to acknowledge that UBC's campuses at Point Grey, Robson Square, and in the Okanagan are situated on the traditional unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh, and in the territory of the Sayux Okanagan Nation. We are all joining in today from many places, near and far, and I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and caretakers of those lands. Today's UBC Connects Masterclass event is done in partnership with the Global Center for Pluralism, a research and education organization headquartered in Ottawa. Our speaker for today, Maaza Mengiste, will be giving the center's 8th annual Pluralism lecture, which she has titled The Moment of Encounter, History, Disruptions, and Transformations.
I'd like to welcome everyone to this UBC Connects Masterclass with Maaza Mengiste, and thanks to the Global Center for Pluralism, our co-presenter for this event. As you know, UBC is co-presenting tomorrow's Global Center for Pluralism annual lecture, where Ms. Mengiste will discuss the moment of encounter, history, disruptions, and transformations. I hope that you can join us. Today's virtual masterclass will connect a small group of UBC students and alumni with Maaza Mengiste to discuss her book, The Shadow King, her career as well as her writing process. Maaza Mengiste is a novelist, an essayist, whose work examines the individual lives at stake during migration, war, and exile. She was born in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and lived in Nigeria and Kenya before moving to the United States. Her critically acclaimed debut novel, Beneath the Lion's Gaze, was selected by The Guardian as one of the 10 best contemporary African books. Her second novel, The Shadow King, was a finalist for both the Los Angeles Times Book Prize for Fiction and the Man Booker Prize. Ms. Mengiste, it is an honor to have you at this master class. Welcome to UBC.
It's really a pleasure to be here and to be speaking with the students and to be talking with people who have been considering the meaning of pluralism and diversity and a collaborative approach to understanding present day, but I think also considering history. My work as a writer has been deeply informed by my own experiences growing up in Ethiopia, experiences of my family members, as well as other people that I knew around me. What I understood very quickly on as a child is that there were certain things that people spoke about and certain things that they did not. And no matter how often I would ask, there were just family stories that were shut out to me. That silence really fed into my curiosity about Ethiopian history. What was it that people were not telling me while I was a child during the revolution? What was actually happening during the revolution? What was happening to some neighbors and family members? Is this part of the reason people were so quiet? My research into Ethiopian history began as a way to begin to understand my own family history. And that family history was a way for me to understand very individual silences that were happening. And so that national narrative was very closely connected to my family's narrative, which became very closely connected to my own personal, intimate story. I approach history in that way. What I was discovering in the process of my research of the revolution was that things that I had remembered as a child were very different from the way that history books were portraying certain events. What I was experiencing or what I was remembering as an adult were domestic and intimate consequences of violence, very personal and acute reactions, or I guess interactions with power, even as a child. That has fed my curiosity about history, but it has also fed my skepticism about how much history can actually convey and how much it leaves silent. If my family's experience was so dramatically different from the way certain history books would convey a moment, what does that tell me? I have taken these questions about intimate, domestic, personal memories and set them against national memories, set them against collective memories in my research, also for my second book. And I've begun to ask not which is true, but I've begun to ask what happens if we set these two together and assume both could be true at the same time. How does one speak to the other as opposed to one erasing the other? If it's not about either this is true or either this is true, but both can be true at the same time and help me complicate my understanding, then what does that mean about history? I've often wondered, if we talk of collective memory, what do we do with individual guilt? If we talk of collective memory, we seem to think also in terms of collective guilt. But what do we do with individual memory and individual guilt? How do we reckon with that when we speak with such large words that are often way too cumbersome? History, collectivity, community. How do we deal with the individual who is grappling with very specific and intimate occurrences in a national tragedy or in a national moment? Those are the questions that have fueled both books, but in particular, this latest book. And I've begun to connect it with photography, considering how photographs, which are small capsules of time that are frozen, how I can look at those and break them apart as well, to consider the fractured narratives that exist within them.
Yeah, so like everybody else, I had a lot of questions for you, but I will settle on this one question. So I noticed the event of photography and the camera as a device of imperialism and colonialism is a major part of the history and storytelling that happens in The Shadow King. So I was wondering if you could speak to your interrogation of the colonial gaze in this novel.
Thank you for that question. Thank you. I was very interested in thinking about the way that the camera was used as a weapon of war, not only in this colonizing effort, but in other endeavors, other moments when the West has come into various countries across Africa and Asia and Latin America. How has a visual narrative often preceded an invasion? And how has a visual narrative helped to cement the power that eventually establishes itself in a country where it doesn't belong? I looked at so many photographs that Italians took of Africans that eventually I began to realized that what I was looking at were not just photos of East Africans, but I was looking at self-portraits of power. That these men who took their cameras to war took images in order to curate a memory of who they were in that moment, in that place. They would take those memories back with them and craft another identity for their family and friends and for themselves about who they were in that time. But what they were also doing was trumpeting Italian prowess. Look, I can stand in front of this warrior with a rifle or in this regalia or holding a spear. I can photograph him and make him look striking, and I can walk away alive. I'm in power here. He is not. And those photographs came up again and again. They're deceptively beautiful. They're made for us to look at and to say, what a striking and beautiful chieftain. But when you step back from it, or at least when I step back from it, I would realize I'm not looking at an Ethiopian. I'm looking at somebody who's in the presence of an Ethiopian with a weapon and who can get away with it and come back to tell that story. And I began to recognize all of these things as nothing more than images of the photographer and the country or power that that person represented.